The rain was relentless. Elias, an old man whose only wealth was the tattered sweater on his back and an empty burlap sack, sat clutching his last piece of dry bread. The world had long since stopped looking at him, but then he felt a heavy, wet pressure on his arm. He looked down to see a beautiful German shepherd. She wasn't barking, she was pleading. Her gaze kept darting toward the flooded gutter, where two tiny, shivering puppies lay motionless. Elias ran toward the puppies and carefully picked them up. He cleaned them with his torn towel and placed them inside his sack. Then he noticed something unusual, a tag under the dog's collar with an address written on it. He decided to deliver them back to their home, but he had no idea this would become the biggest mistake of his life. When he arrived at the house of a wealthy man, the true owner of the dogs, everything changed for Elias, and when he realized something was wrong, he wanted to run away. But it was already too late. Stay with us, because what happens next will break the heart of anyone who witnesses it. But before we begin, make sure you're subscribed and hit the like button. And I want to know who I'm talking to. Drop a comment with your city or country. I love knowing exactly where in the world our paths are crossing right now. The city was a cold ocean, and Elias was a man drowning in plain sight. A shadow in a tattered sweater huddled against a soot-stained wall. He sat on the damp pavement, his fingers numb, clutching a dirty burlap sack as if it held gold. In reality, it was empty, much like his stomach. The rain began to fall harder, but today the rhythm changed. Through the curtain of rain, a figure emerged. It wasn't a police officer telling him to move, nor a kind stranger offering a coin. It was a German shepherd. While others had spent the day looking through Elias, this dog looked at him. Her amber eyes were wide, swirling with a human-like grief. Suddenly, she lunged forward, not to bite, but to grab the sleeve of his coat. She whimpered, a low, guttural sound that vibrated in Elias's chest. She pulled, leading him toward a dark, flooded gutter where two tiny, dark shapes lay motionless. In that moment, the invisible man realized he had finally been seen by a mother who needed a miracle. Elias's breath hitched as he peered into the dark, swirling water of the gutter. There, barely clinging to a concrete ledge, were two tiny German shepherd puppies. They were so small, their eyes barely open, their bodies shaking with a violent. The mother dog stood over them, her tail tucked, looking from the water to Elias with a silent, agonizing plea. It was a crossroads. Elias had nothing, no home, no food, and barely enough strength to keep himself upright. Elias looked at the burlap sack in his hands. It was his only blanket, the only thing keeping the dampness of the pavement from his bones at night. Without a second thought, he knelt in the mud. With trembling hands, he reached into the icy water and scooped up the two heavy, sodden bundles of fur. He didn't just pick them up. He tucked them deep into the burlap sack, then pulled the sack inside his own sweater, pressing the puppies directly against his chest. The shock of their cold skin made him gasp, stealing the heat from his own body, but he didn't pull back. He looked at the mother dog and whispered, "I've got them. I've got them." For the first time in years, Elias wasn't thinking about his next meal. He was thinking about a heartbeat. The night descended like a heavy, frozen shroud, and the temperature plummeted. Elias found a narrow crawl space beneath the old stone bridge, a place where the wind howled but the rain couldn't reach. He collapsed onto the dirt, his legs buckling from exhaustion. Immediately, the mother dog, whom he began to call Shadow, pressed her large, warm body against his side. It was a silent exchange of heat, a primitive pact of survival between two souls the world had discarded. Inside his sweater, the puppies were still dangerously quiet. Elias carefully opened the burlap sack, his heart sinking. One of them, the smaller one with a white patch on its chest, had stopped shaking. It was too still. Panic flared in Elias's chest. He began to rub the tiny creature with the dry parts of his sack, his rough, calloused hands moving with the tenderness of a surgeon. "Don't go," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Stay with me." Shadow watched every movement, her chin resting on Elias's knee, her tail giving a single, anxious thump against the ground. Elias reached into his pocket and pulled out a single, stale crust of bread he had been saving for 2 days. He looked at the bread, then at Shadow's protruding ribs. He didn't hesitate. He softened the bread with a few drops of captured rainwater and offered it to her. She ate it with a desperate hunger, and minutes later, she began to lick the face of the still puppy. Suddenly, a tiny, high-pitched mew broke the silence. The small puppy's legs jerked and its chest began to rise and fall. Relief washed over Elias so strongly he felt lightheaded. They were alive. The first light of dawn was gray and thin, creeping under the bridge to reveal the weary faces of the survivors. Elias woke to the sound of heavy boots echoing on the pavement above. He moved to the edge of his sanctuary, hoping to remain unseen, but a shadow blocked the light. A local shopkeeper stood there, holding a broom like a weapon. "Move along, old man," the man barked, his face twisted in disgust. "I don't want your filth or those mutts ruining my storefront. Get going before I call the authorities." For years, Elias would have bowed his head and vanished without a word. But today, something was different. He felt the puppies stirring against his chest, their tiny lives dependent entirely on his courage. As Elias stood up, Shadow rose with him. She didn't bark, but she stepped in front of Elias, her hackles raised and a low, vibrating growl echoing from her throat. The shopkeeper stepped back, his bravado vanishing in the face of the mother dog's fierce protection. For the first time in a decade, Elias felt a surge of dignity. He wasn't just a beggar anymore, he was a guardian. As he walked away, the morning sun hit Shadow's neck at just the right angle, reflecting a sudden flash of silver. Elias frowned and knelt, running his fingers through the thick, matted fur around her throat. Hidden deep beneath the grime was a high-end leather collar. He pulled it tight to read the engraving on the tarnished silver plate. His heart skipped a beat. This wasn't a stray. Shadow belonged to a prestigious estate on the other side of the city. She was a lost treasure, and the realization hit Elias like a physical blow. He wasn't just holding a dog, he was holding a family's hope. The silver tag felt heavy in Elias's hand, a cold reminder of the world he didn't belong to. The address was for a prestigious estate on the far north side of the city, a place of manicured lawns and high iron gates, miles away from the grimy alleys Elias called home. Over the last 24 hours, Shadow and her puppies had become the only family he had known in years. Elias knew that if he kept them, they would likely starve or succumb to the coming winter. "You have a home, don't you, girl?" Elias whispered, stroking Shadow's ears. She tilted her head, whining softly as if she understood the weight of his words. He knew what he had to do, but he did not know that this is going to be a life-changing moment for him. The puppies needed a vet, a warm bed, and a future he could never provide with a burlap sack and a crust of bread. With a heavy sigh, Elias adjusted the sack against his chest, feeling the rhythmic breathing of the 2 small lives within. He began the long trek across the city. His old boots were thin, and the pavement felt like ice against his feet. But he didn't stop. Every step toward the estate was a step toward his own loneliness. Yet he pushed forward. He wasn't walking toward a reward. He was walking toward the hardest goodbye of his life. He just wanted them to be safe. Exhausted and trembling, he reached for the intercom, but before he could speak, the gates swung open and 2 security vehicles skidded to a halt. A man in an expensive suit rushed out, followed by 2 uniformed officers. Their eyes didn't land on Elias's face. They landed on the dog. "Shadow!" the man cried out, but as he moved closer, his joy curdled into suspicion. He looked at Elias, the dirt under his fingernails, his torn sweater, and the bulging burlap sack. "What have you done to her?" the man demanded, his voice trembling with rage. "You kidnapped her, didn't you? You've been holding her for ransom." Elias tried to speak, his throat dry and tight. "No, sir. I found her. In the rain." But the officers didn't wait. They grabbed Elias by the arms, forcing him toward the gravel. The burlap sack tumbled from his grip and the puppies spilled out onto the grass, shivering and confused. The man gasped, seeing the frail state of the animals. "You stole her and let her suffer like this?" He gestured to the officers. "Arrest him!" But as the handcuffs clicked, a powerful roar shattered the tension. Shadow didn't run to her owner. Instead, she lunged between the officers and Elias, her teeth bared and her body rigid. She wasn't protecting her master. She was shielding the beggar. The officers froze as the dog let out a warning bark so fierce it echoed off the mansion walls. She looked at the man in the suit, then back at Elias, refusing to budge. The silence that followed was heavy. The family realized with a chilling shock, Shadow wasn't afraid of this man. She was loyal to him. The air grew still as the owner, a man named Mr. Sterling, watched in stunned silence. He saw his champion dog, a creature of pedigree and pride, standing guard over a man who had nothing. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Elias hadn't stolen Shadow. He had been the only thing keeping her soul alive. The officers slowly stepped back, releasing their grip on Elias's worn arms. With trembling hands, Elias knelt one last time. He gathered the puppies back into the burlap sack and held it out toward Mr. Sterling, his eyes downcast. "They need a doctor," Elias whispered, his voice thick with unshed tears. "I have nothing to give them but my warmth, and today that wasn't enough." He turned to walk away, his shoulders hunched, disappearing back toward the cold, gray city he came from. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for a thank you. He had done his duty, but he didn't get 5 steps before a hand landed on his shoulder. "Wait," Mr. Sterling said, his voice cracking with emotion. "You saved my family. We've been searching for her for months, but we never looked in the places where you were. You didn't just find her. You protected her." Mr. Sterling didn't just offer a reward, he offered a life. Today, Elias is no longer a ghost on the streets. He is the head caretaker of the Sterling estate, the man responsible for the very dogs he saved in the rain. The world saw a man with nothing, but a mother dog saw a man who had everything she needed, a heart. If you were moved by this incredible story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss an amazing tale like this. Stay with us for more heartwarming and unbelievable stories.